from around 10% of Illinois registered voters being inactive to how the Secretary of State enables the voter registration process to go on without including non-citizens, and more. Got response from election and other officials to concerns raised by the Illinois Election Integrity Project. Welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Yesterday we talked with Carol Davis. She is with the Illinois Election Integrity Project, and she shared with us some of her chief concerns on a variety of fronts, from mail-in balloting to non-citizens possibly being able to register to vote and more. But one thing that she focused on was the number of inactive voters that they've been able to find across the state of Illinois, and the Illinois State Board of Elections confirming that there are 839,000 plus inactive registered voters of the nearly 8 million active registered voters. Here is Carol Davis talking briefly about the concerns of why they are finding it problematic. There's 1 in 10 voters in Illinois being, inactive.
People are parked on there that should not be on there. And of course, it opens the possibility that those names could be used by nefarious actors to cast vote-by-mail ballots.
So Davis worried about people seeing those inactive voters on rolls and saying, hey, we're going to nefariously use their vote to go whichever way the nefarious actors want. But Illinois State Board of Elections, they did reply to a list of concerns, and they said currently in Illinois there are 839,119 inactive registered voters, and that's of the 7.9 million active registered voters. They go on further to say that a voter becomes inactive when an election authority's statutorily required attempt to contact the voter is unsuccessful. This is typically done by mailing a non-forwardable voter card to the voter. If the Postal Service can't deliver it and it bounces back to the election authority, the voter is moved to inactive status. The election authority then sends a forwardable mailing in an attempt to contact the voter. They'll also use the Illinois State Board of Elections database to try to determine whether the voter is registered elsewhere and can be canceled. Illinois is also a member of ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, which helps election authorities identify voters who may be registered in other states and can be canceled. State Board of Elections goes on to say that if this fails and the voter does not show up to vote in subsequent 2 federal elections, the inactive voter is canceled. If they do show up to vote, they need to show ID to confirm that they still reside in their registered address. So they say that having a significant number of inactive voters is indicative of the state's ongoing voter list maintenance efforts. They're basically voters who are awaiting cancellation, but federal law requires that we can give them 2 federal election cycles. That's 2 consecutive even-year elections in case they reappear at their current address. So, again, that's the State Board of Elections response to the 10% of registered voters being labeled inactive voters, something that Carol Davis and Judicial Watch, they were able to review and find that number themselves by looking at the state's voter rolls after getting a court to order them access to that recently. So the mail-in voting is another aspect, and in Illinois you have mail-in voting to where you can request a mail-in ballot and they'll send it to you, or you can request a permanent mail-in ballot to where they send you automatically a mail-in ballot for every election. That's got some problems with it, according to election integrity officials who say mail-in voting increases the potential for fraud. Here's Carol Davis from our conversation yesterday.
So it is not secure. But again, if you claim your name, get it early, take it to the polling place as early as you can vote. That way, if they do say, well, hey, someone's already cast a vote by mail ballot in your name, then you've got 30, 40 days before Election Day to call the sheriff.
She also went on to, say that she's got concerns of the automatic voter registration process leading to non-citizens possibly getting registered to vote. The State Board of Elections, they said regarding automatic voter registration, they point to a filing from the Secretary of State that goes through a variety of things that they say are facts about House Bill 3882. So let me pull this document up because it's kind of fascinating to see this, but we'll read some of this together here. This is a document that the State Board of Elections shared with me concerning House Bill 3882. And this is from an attorney within the Secretary of State's office saying that they want to clarify some things about that legislation. The goal is to improve road safety and reduce instances of discrimination. In tandem with the pursuit of these goals, the Secretary of State's office also implemented new safeguards to ensure only eligible qualified U.S. citizens could submit voter registration applications. So what this legislation did, 3882, is it changed the temporary visitor driver's license. If you're not familiar with that, it essentially is a driver's license the state of Illinois gives to non-citizens considered temporary visitors. Now, before, it had on the top, above the picture, not a valid form of ID. So they removed that and said federal rules apply or something to that effect, all to deal with real ID standards. But they say that the prominent purple banner reading "not valid for ID" found on TVDLs often dissuaded undocumented individuals from opting to get one. This led to more unlicensed drivers on Illinois roads who never took a vision test, a written test, or a behind-the-wheel test, all of which are essential to ensuring a driver is fit and safe to operate a vehicle. It also meant fewer drivers needing to show proof of insurance, which is required to drive legally in Illinois. In terms of voter registration, the current procedures used by local election authorities to process voter registration applications completed at DMVs have not changed and do not change because of this new law. Again, this is a law that went into effect July 1st of this year. Various electronic protection measures are already in place that fully omit the voter registration process for all TVDL applicants due to the fact that they are non-citizens. And it goes through even more. Again, it says it's important to note the individuals applying to register to vote with their local county clerk election authority are not required to show proof of U.S. citizenship. And that's something that I think Carol Davis talked about, the need for federal legislation to pass. It already passed the House, but it needs to pass the Senate to require proof of citizenship for voters. But they say that at least when it comes to the Secretary of State's office, current programming within their systems automatically segregates non-citizens from citizens when it comes to that automatic voter registration process. And if you're following along here on the video, you can see some of those things they say. For instance, if there's no social security number, then they're flagged and they're not included in the automatic voter registration process, with a whole host of other things that prohibit people from using the automatic voter registration process in order to get registered to vote in the state of Illinois. But then you get into the questions of how long it takes to count votes in the state of Illinois. And that is, 2 weeks after Election Day. You got mail-in ballots that are still being allowed. But for federal elections, should those only be counted on Election Day? That's a lawsuit that Davis tried with Judicial Watch in Illinois that was ultimately beaten by the defendants in that case, and the courts dismissed it. But there's another case out of Mississippi that Davis says they're keeping their eyes on.
And joined together in Mississippi, and we'll be watching suits like that around the country very carefully, hoping that there'll be good outcomes there, that it will add strength when we come back to Illinois to try to hit that again.
So clearly she says that they're going to try to bring this up again in future litigation. But the concerns of ballot harvesting, and that is when you have somebody go out and grab ballots from individuals and turn those in for them. Of course, if you do this physically at an election authority, they have to check affidavits that the individual voter signed to hand it over to you, and then they verify signatures that way. But when it comes to the drop boxes, that's not the case. It's a loophole in the law that's even recognized by election authorities, to where there's no election authority there at the drop box checking that signature to make sure that you're verified and able to deliver a ballot. But the Illinois State Board of Elections, they say under Illinois law, any mail ballot being delivered to the election authority on behalf of a voter must contain the voter's signature on a statement authorizing the individual to deliver the ballot and the signature of the individual delivering the ballot. Ballot harvesting, as it's commonly referred to, means actively targeting voters who have unreturned mail-in ballots and coercing them to vote a certain way or to surrender an unmarked ballot so the collector can mark it without input from the voter. Someone willing to engage in this illegal act of coercive or deceptive election fraud also is likely to engage in coercive, deceptive practices where you've got, this idea of ballot harvesting. The crime of harvesting takes place not at the point of delivery, but in the homes of targeted voters, the Illinois State Board of Elections said in a statement yesterday when I asked about all of these different concerns. So clearly, these are things that we'll see how it plays out over time as we get closer and closer to the November 5th general election, where early voting begins September 26th. So less than a month away. Unbelievable how time flies. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up each morning with us right here with America's Talking Network. Go to thecentersquare.com for all the headlines and to get the daily newsletter. Again, thecentersquare.com.